The idea of a cybernetic human feels like it belongs in a movie. You probably picture a person with a robot arm or an eye that glows red. Someone part metal, part flesh, a cyborg. It's a concept that is both exciting and a little scary. And it's been a staple of science fiction for a long time. But it's not just fiction anymore. The line between human and machine is getting blurry, so how close are we really? The answer is complicated. In some ways, we are already there. In other ways, we are decades, maybe even centuries, away. To get a real answer, we have to define what we mean by cybernetic human. If it just means using technology to overcome a biological limit, then glasses and hearing aids count. A pacemaker is a small computer that keeps a heart beating correctly. An insulin pump is an artificial pancreas, monitoring blood sugar and delivering medicine. These devices are integrated into our bodies. They work automatically to keep us alive and healthy. Millions of people rely on them every day. By this definition, cybernetic humans are already walking among us. They are our grandparents, our friends, our neighbors. It's so common we don't even think of it as cybernetics. We just call it medicine. But that's probably not what you mean. You're likely thinking about something more direct. A machine that connects to our nervous system, something that restores a lost ability or even gives us a new one. This is where the picture gets more interesting. This is where we see the real frontier. Let's start with what we can do right now. The most successful and widespread example of true cybernetics is the cochlear implant. For people with a certain type of profound deafness, a hearing aid just makes sounds louder. That doesn't help if the inner ear itself is damaged. A cochlear implant bypasses the damaged part. A microphone on the outside picks up sound. A processor turns that sound into a digital signal. That signal is sent to an implant inside the skull, which has a tiny wire that snakes directly into the cochlea, the spiral-shaped part of the inner ear. This wire has electrodes that stimulate the auditory nerve directly. The brain receives these signals and, with time and training, learns to interpret them as sound. Think about that for a second. It's a man-made device translating the physical world into the language of the brain. It's not a perfect replacement for natural hearing. Users often say sounds are robotic or tinny at first. But for someone who lived in silence, it can be life-changing. They can hear a loved one's voice. They can listen to music. They can hear a fire alarm. This isn't science fiction. Hundreds of thousands of people have these implants. It is a stunning success of biology and engineering working together. Then there are prosthetics. For a long time, a prosthetic arm was just a hook or a passive plastic hand. It was a tool, but it didn't feel like a part of the person. That has changed dramatically. We now have myoelectric prosthetics. These use sensors that sit on the skin of the residual limb. When the person tenses a muscle, the sensors pick up the tiny electrical signal. A computer in the prosthetic interprets that signal and moves the hand or fingers. A person thinks close hand. Their brain sends a signal to the muscle and the robotic hand closes. This is a huge leap forward. It makes the prosthetic feel more intuitive, more like an extension of the body. But it's still not perfect. The control can be clunky. You might have to use one muscle to open the hand and another to close it, which isn't how our bodies work naturally. It takes a lot of practice. And there's a massive piece of the puzzle missing touch. A natural hand doesn't just do things, it feels things. It tells you if a coffee cup is hot. It tells you how hard you're gripping an egg. Without that feedback, even the most advanced robotic hand is just a fancy clamp. So, the next frontier for prosthetics is sensory feedback. Researchers are experimenting with ways to send signals back from the prosthetic to the user. This can be done with small motors that vibrate on the skin, giving a rough sense of pressure. But the truly advanced work involves connecting the prosthetic directly to the nerves in the limb. This is called targeted muscle reinnervation. It's a complex surgery where doctors reroute the nerves that once went to the missing hand. They connect them to other muscles, say in the chest. When the person thinks about closing their hand, a part of their chest muscle contracts. The sensors can then read the signal, which is much clearer and more intuitive. The amazing part is that it can work in reverse. When a sensor in the prosthetic fingertip touches something, it can send a signal back to a device that stimulates those same nerves. The person doesn't feel a buzz in their chest. Their brain interprets the signal as a sensation in their missing finger. They can literally feel with their robotic hand. This is real. It's happening in research labs. It's not widely available, and it's incredibly expensive, but it shows a pathway to a future where a prosthetic limb feels and acts just like a biological one. It's a direct two-way communication link between a machine and the human nervous system. That is the very definition of cybernetics. We can see a similar story with vision. For certain types of blindness, like retinitis pigmentosa, the photoreceptor cells in the retina die off. But The nerve cells that connect the retina to the brain are often still functional. The retinal implants, sometimes called bionic eyes, try to take advantage of this. A tiny camera mounted on a pair of glasses captures an image. That image is processed and sent to a chip implanted on the surface of the retina. The chip has a grid of electrodes that stimulate the remaining nerve cells. The result isn't a return to normal sight. Users don't see a clear picture. They see patterns of light and dark spots. They can learn to interpret these patterns to see a doorway, a window, or the outline of a person. It's more like seeing a crude image on a low-resolution scoreboard. It's a long way from the complexity of a healthy eye. But for someone living in total darkness, being able to navigate a room or see a loved one's face as a shape of light is a miracle. The technology is still in its infancy. It's a starting point, not a final destination. But like the cochlear implant, it proves that we can interface with the nervous system to restore a sense. So far, we've talked mostly about restoring what was lost. We're fixing broken parts. We are bringing people back to a baseline. This is where most of the work in cybernetics is focused today. It has a clear medical purpose. It helps people. But the sci-fi idea of a cybernetic human is usually about more than just restoration. It's about enhancement. It's about going beyond the limits of a normal human body. This is where things get much more speculative and much more controversial. The key to any kind of advanced cybernetics, especially enhancement, is the brain-computer interface, or BCI. This is the ultimate connection, the direct link between human thought and a machine. We've already talked about it in a limited way with prosthetics and implants, but a true high-bandwidth BCI is the holy grail. There are two main types of BCIs. Non-invasive ones sit on the outside of the head. You've probably seen them. They look like a cap with a bunch of wires and sensors. These are called electroencephalography, or EEG caps. They measure the tiny electrical fields created by the firing of millions of neurons in the brain. They can pick up broad patterns of brain activity. For example, if you imagine moving your left hand, an EEG can detect a change in the part of your brain that controls that movement. People have used EEG caps to control video games, fly drones, and type on a screen just by thinking. But it's slow and imprecise. Think of it like trying to listen to a single conversation in a packed, noisy football stadium from outside the building. So you can tell when the crowd cheers, but you can't pick out individual voices. EEG can detect general states like calm or focused, or a very strong intention like move left. But it can't read your thoughts. It doesn't have the resolution. To get that resolution, you need an invasive BCI. You have to go inside the skull. This means implanting electrodes directly into the brain tissue. This is much more dangerous and is currently only done in clinical trials for people with severe paralysis. In these trials, a tiny chip, sometimes smaller than a postage stamp, is placed on the surface of the brain's motor cortex. This chip has hundreds of microscopic electrodes that can listen to the firing of individual neurons or small groups of neurons. The results are astounding. A person who has been paralyzed for years can think about moving a cursor on a screen, and the cursor moves. They can think about moving a robotic arm, and the arm reaches out and grabs a bottle of water. They can type messages just by imagining writing them. This is a level of control that was unthinkable a generation ago. It's a direct translation of intent into action, bypassing a broken spinal cord. Companies like Neuralink are trying to take this technology to the next level. Their goal is to create an implant with thousands of electrodes on ultra-thin, flexible threads. The idea is to record from far more neurons with much higher precision. The long-term vision is not just for medical restoration, but for a symbiotic relationship with artificial intelligence. This is where we step firmly into the realm of enhancement. Could you use such a device to search the internet with a thought? To learn a new language instantly by downloading it? To communicate with someone else telepathically, brain to brain? This is the future that some people are working towards, but we have to be brutally honest about the challenges. They are immense. The brain is not a computer. It's not a hard drive that you can just plug a USB cable into. It's a living, changing, incredibly complex biological organ. The first major hurdle is the physical interface. Our bodies are designed to attack and reject foreign objects. When you insert electrodes into the brain, the immune system responds. It forms scar tissue around them, a process called gliosis. This scar tissue acts like an insulator. It degrades the signal over time. The implant that worked great in the first month might be useless after a year or two. We need to develop new materials that the body accepts, materials that can stay in the brain for a lifetime without causing damage or losing their function. Then there's the problem of power and data. An implant inside your skull needs electricity. You can't just plug it into the wall. Current systems often have a port on the head or use wireless charging, but these are clunky solutions. We need a safe, reliable, long-term power source. And how do you get the massive amount of data from thousands of electrodes out of the brain? Transmitting it wirelessly through the skull is a huge engineering challenge. Even if we solve all the hardware problems, we're left with the biggest one of all, the software problem. We don't fully understand the brain's code. We can listen to neurons firing, but we don't know exactly what they are saying. We can identify the patterns for move arm left, but reading a complex, abstract thought like, I wonder what I should have for dinner, is currently impossible. It might be fundamentally impossible. A thought might not be a discrete packet of data that can be read. It might be a dynamic brain-wide process that can't be isolated, and the brain itself is not static. It's constantly rewiring itself, a property called plasticity. This is how we learn and adapt. If you introduce a BCI, the brain will adapt to it. This is a good thing. It's why people can learn to control a robotic arm. But it also means the relationship is a two-way street. The BCI will change the brain. We have no idea what the long-term psychological or neurological effects of that would be. Beyond the technical and biological hurdles, there are the ethical and social questions. These are just as important, if not more so. Let's say we perfect the technology. Let's say in 30 years, you can get a brain implant that boosts your memory, improves your focus, and lets you access the internet with a thought. Who gets it? Will it be an expensive procedure, only available to the wealthy? If so, we risk creating a new and terrifying kind of inequality. Not a gap between rich and poor, but a gap between the enhanced and the unenhanced. A biological caste system, how could a normal person compete in the job market against someone with a perfect, searchable memory and lightning-fast mental calculation? This isn't just a plot for a dystopian novel, it's a real possibility we need to think about now. And what about security? If your brain is connected to a network, it can be hacked. It's a chilling thought. Could someone steal your memories? Could they implant false ones? Could a virus make you do things against your will? We struggle to keep our phones and laptops secure. Securing a human brain would be infinitely more difficult, and the stakes would be infinitely higher. A hacked email account is a problem. A hacked mind is a loss of self. This leads to the question of identity. Who are you, really? Are you your biological brain, or are you the sum of your thoughts and memories? If some of those memories are stored on a silicon chip, are they still yours? If an algorithm in your implant is helping you make decisions, is it still you making them? What happens to free will? If you can upgrade your personality to be less anxious or more confident, where does the original you end and the technology begin? These are deep philosophical questions that we don't have answers for. We also have a smaller, more immediate version of this happening in the biohacker or grinder community. These are people who are not waiting for medical approval or multi-billion-dollar companies. They are experimenting on themselves, implanting small magnets in their fingertips to feel magnetic fields, or putting NFC chips in their hands to unlock doors or store data. For them, it's about exploration and personal freedom. It's a subculture pushing the boundaries of what it means to be human. But it also highlights the risks of unregulated experimentation. So, to return to the original question, how close are we? We are already living in an age of restorative cybernetics. Pacemakers, cochlear implants, and advanced prosthetics are here. They are changing lives for the better. They are proving that the integration of human and machine is possible. For people who have lost a function, this technology is a blessing. The progress here will continue. Limbs will become more dexterous, bionic eyes will gain more resolution, and our ability to fix broken parts of the body and brain will get better and better. Within our lifetimes, we will likely see a paralyzed person walk again using a BCI that controls their own limbs, not just a robotic one. But when it comes to elective, enhancing cybernetics, the kind we see in movies, we are much, much further away. The technical, biological, and ethical challenges are staggering. We are not on the verge of downloading skills into our brains or becoming telepathic. We are at the very beginning of a very long road. The brain remains the most complex object in the known universe. Our attempts to interface with it are still crude. We are listening to the roar of the stadium, not the whispers of a single person. The cybernetic human is not a single destination we will suddenly arrive at. It's a spectrum. We are already on that spectrum, and we are moving along it. But the movement is slow, careful, and driven by necessity. The first true cyborgs will not be super soldiers or tech billionaires seeking an upgrade. They will be ordinary people trying to get back something they lost: a limb, a sense, a connection to the world. The real story of our cybernetic future is not about becoming machines. It's about using machines to become more fully human. It's about a blind person being able to see the face of their child, even if it's just as a pattern of light. It's about a deaf person hearing music for the first time. It's about someone trapped in their own body being able to communicate with the outside world. The hype often focuses on the enhancement, on the sci-fi dream of transcending our biology. But the reality, for now and for the foreseeable future, is much more grounded. It's about healing. It's about restoration. And in that sense, the cybernetic age has already begun. We just haven't been calling it that. It has arrived not with a bang, but with the quiet hum of a small machine working to mend a broken piece of a human life. And that is a far more profound story than any science fiction movie. The journey is long, and the hardest parts are still ahead of us. We have to be thoughtful, we have to be careful, because what's at stake is not just what we can do, but who we are.